So, the World Test Championship final is finally here as India take on New Zealand for a $1.6 million prize at the Ageas Bowl in Southampton. The two most deserving sides in this, I mean, they finished way clear of everybody else in qualifying, and we're hopefully going to get a real exhibition of just how good Test cricket can be. Fortunate enough that it's in a neutral venue. I mean, we'll go into that later. It's not entirely neutral, but yeah, look, India and New Zealand have really outclassed the rest of the competition to get to this area. I think England and Australia were third and fourth respectively in some kind of order, but neither of them looked anything like these two nations here. India on their way to the final, beating the West Indies, South Africa, Bangladesh, Australia, and England. Whereas New Zealand were a little more tested in their run through. They had a really heavy loss to Australia. They had a cancelled series against Bangladesh, and then they beat the West Indies and Pakistan. But as well as in this whole tournament bracket, New Zealand actually beat India 2-0 in their own backyard, in New Zealand. So, they have had a head-to-head in the build-up to this, and New Zealand came out better for it, but they did have home advantage, and modern Test cricket, nobody loses at home unless you're England. So yeah, through this I'm going to run through the preparation, the squad, and my overall thoughts for the series in front. So yeah, we hope you enjoy. With the preparation for the World Test Championship final, it really hasn't been fair, and I can really understand why a lot of the Indian squad and management have been quite frustrated with how things have panned out leading into this final. New Zealand arrived much earlier and got the massive benefit of playing a two-game series against England. Winning one, drawing one due to rain. It would have been 2-0, but for the fact that the rain saved England. Meanwhile, India have only arrived, I think, 2 weeks ago, and their only preparation has been an inter-squad game. So, maybe not the most competitive of environments, only getting to play against each other, not getting to experience more native bowling and batting conditions. Also, a lot of their players are only going to be in England for the first time. Some of that young batting lineup that really haven't got to test themselves in English conditions, which are so different to everything else they would have played at. New Zealand, it's more similar to them anyway, and they've had the benefit of playing against competitive opposition in two games where they steamrolled England, but at least it's an area where they have the massive advantage. India also haven't played a test match since March against England in India, so it's not like they've been touring anyway. And all the while since, they've just either been playing in the county championship, I think a couple of their guys maybe are over or are planning on staying over, or playing in the IPL and other T20 leagues. So it's a massive point towards New Zealand here, with a massive clear advantage in terms of how their preparation has gone. Okay, so next up, probably the easiest thing to just run through is the squads that both teams have picked. India have the disadvantage of having a 15-man one-day squad out in Sri Lanka at the same time as this, getting ready for a series of one-day games next month. So, split in the squad, but for the most part, there's no major overlap. This is very much their test squad. New Zealand, on the other hand, have been out here anyway, pretty much used everybody in the squad, I think. Yep. Used everybody in the squad ahead of this to try and give everyone a chance to acclimatise to England, see what they could offer in English conditions. So again, that preparation benefit massively in favour of New Zealand, because looking at this India squad and just kind of off the top of my head, the likes of Gill, Vihari, Siraj and Pant, I don't think have played a test match in England before. A lot of the other guys, the likes of Sharma, Pujara, Kohli, obviously, have had masses of experience touring everywhere, so there is a real core of experience to this India team, but a couple of key positions, especially in the batting contingent, this is going to be very new for, and they really would have benefited from even playing Ireland or playing like a good county side in the build-up to this, just to acclimatise and to face some native bowling, and to get used to the conditions that are possibly going to be a real problem for some of their more inexperienced players leading into this. Looking at the India side especially, it's interesting to see what sort of bowling contingent they're going to go with. I personally wouldn't expect them to go with two spinners at Southampton. I just don't see how that's going to benefit them, especially in what I'm going to talk about later in the conditions, which are probably going to favour swinging bowling, which is why I really don't get why they haven't brought Bhuvaneshwar Kumar over, as every time he plays in England, he is a nightmare. Even for like the top level of English batsmen, never mind guys who are less used to these conditions. It's why like Bumrah, Shami, and uh, Sharma are going to be so key to this, because they could benefit massively from the swinging ball in England. New Zealand, on the other hand, have, as I said, used pretty much everybody in the squad. So really, it's just about trimming what they expect to be their best side. Um, Obviously beneficial to the fact that Williamson and Watling both passed their fitness tests and are going to be eligible for this. Both missed the second game against England, but seems more precautionary than anything, as well as this being Watling's last game. You just wouldn't want to see a guy miss out on a final and his well known to be last test. Their biggest selection dilemma is going to be sort of figuring out that pace attack as well. Obviously, with Trent Boult coming over from the IPL last minute to play the second test against England, he has sort of tried to wedge himself into that bowling attack, which Southey and Wagner are obviously going to be in, and then it's a case of whether they go with 3 or 4 pace men, because I personally think Jamieson would be a nightmare for this Indian bowling attack, but Boult is more than likely now going to play, having impressed against England in the second test, and then it's whether they opt to go with Ageas Patel or decide to offer Jamieson or Henry, both of whom caused England no end of trouble in their second test. So that's the major dilemma for New Zealand. Their batting kind of picks itself, again, just whether de Grandin gets in as that all-rounder, or, as I say, the extra pace man or a spinner. Personally, I always like to have a spin bowler in, but looking at the prediction of weather for this game, it's get as many swinging bowlers in as you can, because this game ain't going to last long. So just to wrap things up here then, I mean, it wouldn't be this channel if we didn't do some form of predictions going into this. And while we'll be touching this and ready for the weekend, which should be out on Friday when this game is actually happening, we sort of have to. I mean, look, what's the point in following sport if you don't have an opinion on who you think's going to win? But I just think everything about this leans towards New Zealand. They have the benefit of a superior bowling attack for these conditions. They have more experience in these conditions. They're more like what they play at home. And with this India team, they're phenomenally talented, but I don't think that they are going to be in form enough as of late to play in English conditions against a team that are acclimatised. If this was basically anywhere else, I would have this as basically a 50-50 split. But I think I'd go 75-25 in favour of New Zealand here, because of the benefit of the warm-up, the benefit of the conditions. But my biggest hope for this is that this actually happens and is a 5-day test match, because all signs point to a disaster with the weather, and it's why so much debate has been over why they even picked England as the host for this to begin with. There's yellow weather warnings across Southampton literally from Friday morning. There's no reserve days. I mean, they should have learnt from the ICC one-day tournament in England about at least leave yourself room to change on the fly if conditions don't go in your favour. Because the last thing they would want here is the first ever one of these to be completely rained off and it to just look like an absolute joke. So I'm personally leaning New Zealand here. My biggest hope is that we just get a really, really great showcase of Test cricket at the highest level, and that we come away wanting more and wanting this to be expanded to a best-of-3 series, or wanting this to be a more regular occurrence. But yeah, I'm just hopeful there'll be something to enjoy here, but I'm leaning New Zealand for the win. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Drop your predictions. Let me know what you think I got right, what I got wrong, and hopefully let me know you want more, because I adore Test cricket, and if you guys want more, I'll make more. So yeah, see ya.